let's get into the good shit now. We got Galleons dropping their self-titled album.
I'm sorry, did I hear good shit?
Yeah.
Good. Because this is my favorite album of this month.
I won't go that far, but I was definitely. I said
mean,
I was
you're not
pleasantly.
me, so that's one thing.
I've said I was pleasantly surprised with the past two albums. I was also very pleasantly surprised in this one in a very different way because I have gone back to a handful of these songs significantly more.
I will hold back and we will let everyone else speak.
Yeah, I wasn't very high on the singles, and then when I heard the album as a whole, I was like, wow, this is a lot better. I'm gonna say that again in another album we talk about.
Yep.
But yeah, this is great. Also, I didn't know they were the band is like part in Australia and partly in what's the other country? Russia.
Yeah.
This band is like all virtual as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so is Valiant Hearts. Everything Tom Byrne has done is all virtual.
That's interesting to me.
Derek, what'd you think of the album?
I really, really enjoyed it, more so than I thought I was going to based on the strength of the singles, like Jacob said. I think that my favorite tracks are the non-singles.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
You know, Werewolf, I Travel East, As Feeble Goes West, Part 3, Youngblood, and then That Ain't No Crown. I Travel East is actually my favorite song off this album. It's the one. Look, this dude Tom sounds like Johnny Craig. I'm just putting it out there. He does. Like the comparison. It's not even like a comparison at this point. It's like, damn, we lost Johnny Craig, but we gained Johnny Craig. Like, especially like the way he does the vocal runs and the delivery on I Travel East. It's very reminiscent of like Relativity or no, I had it right the first time. Relativity. And self-titled era Emarosa. Like this whole album for me feels like a really strong callback to that era of just post-hardcore in general, like that 2008 to 2011 era. I obviously wasn't into that style of music when it came out, but those first two Emarosa albums did a lot for me senior year of high school and like helping me get through it. And so to have an album that's kind of acting like a callback to it was really neat to listen to, especially because it's so not coincident, similar, in a lot of ways. I think if I had to give a criticism to the album, which I will put as my closing thought before I let you go wild, is that it, as much as it sounds a lot like that era of post-hardcore, it's almost too much of a good thing, I guess, to be a way to put it, like, at points. Like, I hear certain songs, and I'm like, okay, this is good, like, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I've heard this already, like, in bits and pieces on other parts of the album, at enough of a rate where I'm like, maybe I'm not as high on this song because it feels like I've heard another song on the album do the same thing but better already,
Do you have an
but
example
overall,
so I want to see if I agree with you.
I think I don't have any specific examples in terms of like 30 seconds of this song sounded better on the other 30 seconds of this song.
Right.
I guess I hear the strongest bits of my favorite tracks on the album as just like a general sort of thing. And I hear those same things being done on the rest of the album, but not quite as strong. So I'm left feeling less high on the rest of the album solely on the grounds that I really, really like the songs that are good on this album, or that I enjoy the most, if that makes sense. But overall, I mean, this is my favorite album of theirs by far. You and I have been listening to them for, 3 years now?
Before that, when they were about like 20,000 monthly listeners, they cracked down 100K.
Well, no, because 20,000 was that last album, we found them. They were under 1,000. Like it
Were
was
they?
like yeah, it was like 900 something.
Oh, I wish Spotify had like a there
Yeah,
or
yeah,
there was
like
a
a
website with
listening
like a
tracker.
chart where you could actually watch.
Yeah, because it was just that Dream Machines album.
Damn, they've grown so
Yeah,
much.
yeah, honestly, and understandably so, because I feel like overall, in terms of songwriting, instrumentation, vocal delivery, all of it, this is their strongest effort by far, and it really shows. So I really enjoyed this album more so than I was expecting to.
Yeah. So as you said, I came from Dream Machines. Loved that album for the most part. There were some that really didn't click with me. Metropolis, I could not get into for whatever reason. I
Me
went
neither.
through multiple listens. This one clicked instantly. Every single song I enjoyed. First listen to the most recent listen I've gone to. Every single one. As both of you have said, singles are the weakest. And that's not a bad thing. That's just because everything else that was disguised in the album until it was released just hit the bar so much higher. Tobias from Novelists and Ex Alaska bringing in Youngblood, that's a wonderful feature. Garrett Rappel is also a good feature, but I think that's probably the best single. Werewolf and That Ain't No Crown are arguably tied for my top non-single of the album. Werewolf just has a really good catchy sound. The chorus is good. The end where it flows into cleans and then uncleans and kind of reverses back and forth and kind of meshes them together. You know, I loved that blend, and I go back to it every time. It's probably up to 200 listens to me right now.
200,000.
I was
like,
about to
holy
say
shit.
that, yeah. When in Rome, I don't give that song much credit. I went back and listened to it. It's good. It's just not stuck with me as much as the others. Casablanca is probably my least favorite non-single, but that's because everything else I've been able to hit, click with instantly. Been able to replay. Tom, this is his best work by far. I followed the album process where he's working on the vocal leads, so I could like listen to every song and know like, oh, he did the vocal track for this, in this like Instagram behind the scenes, so like I can hear this exact lyric and I know where this came from. Following that and then leading up to this album that did not disappoint whatsoever. There is not a bad song on this album, and that is hard to say. Really hard to say on a 10 track album.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I have this spoiler. This is going to crack somewhere in my top 5.
Understandably so.
So to get into some of my thoughts real quick, I mean, unless Jacob, do you want to say?
Well, this is totally off a topic, sorry, but I just want to say the album artwork this month, like singles and all, is the best month for album artwork.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
No, the album art, in case you guys can't see it in the audio version, it's literally a wolf from the Three Little Pigs burning down a wooden house. And a lot of this album is referencing fairy tales. Let's Pretend has like Mirror Mirror on the Wall. I think there's also some fairy tale lyrics written in When in Rome and in Casablanca, but don't quote me on that. I forgot to mention Travelese. There's this album's just really good.
Yeah.
I feel like I Travel East should be my favorite song on the album, but it isn't. I've gone back to That Ain't No Crown significantly more, so I'm labeling that as my favorite song on the album for sure. Given that none of the singles really clicked with me, listening to it in full, I'm definitely much higher on the entire album and some of the singles. Hate the Player, Not the Game, and Better the Devil You Know in particular grew on me. Let's Pretend still has not clicked. That Garrett Rapp feature doesn't do it for me. And I think the other thing that's holding this album back for me is the closing 2 tracks of When in Rome and Casablanca Also, really just not doing much for me.
Mm.
Probably the two most underwhelming tracks on the album, if you ask me. But other than that, considering that I really did not have very high expectations, coming out of this album with Youngblood, That Ain't No Crown, and I Travel East as all really solid songs that I enjoy going back to was, I want to say, more than I was expecting, but at the same time, I really enjoy Valiant Hearts and I really like Tom's voice, so like it makes sense that I finally found something that worked for me.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of time, to be honest. Yeah, I don't have too much to say on the whole. I didn't love the album. I don't think it's gonna rank anywhere near like my top whatever come end of the year, but definitely a solid album. Definitely worth a listen. Glad I gave it a listen and all that.
I'm really interested now that the Galleons album cycle is over with. I'm really intrigued on what they're gonna do with Valiant Hearts. Just listening to some of the demos from what they're working on, it sounds pretty different to their previous album. So I'm interested.